where I want to give you some tips and advice on how to move forward, right? And these are tips and advice that I'm using personally and I've learned over my life, and I hope you find them helpful, right? So number one, I read something very, very profound a few days ago, right? Somebody sent me this article which I read. And basically the article said, if you don't come out of this lockdown, being number one, more mentally tough, number two, having more knowledge, number three, having a new skill, and number four, building a better relationship, then you never lack the time, you lack discipline. Let me repeat that. If you don't come out of this lockdown with more mental toughness, with more knowledge, with more skill, and with better relationships, if you don't come out with these four, you cannot say, I didn't have the time. It means you didn't have the discipline, right? And it becomes critical. We have no excuse now. We're all sitting at home. We have all the time in the world, right? If you don't have the discipline to come out of this lockdown with these four things, then you've lost out on life, right? Now, let me break the things up for you. Number one, more toughness, right? People, it's the first time your generation and even my generation has experienced something like this. It's incredibly tough, right? It's a tough time not only for you, it's a tough time for your parents. Trust me when I tell you this, right? I'm asking myself the question. Your teachers, your parents, people like me, we're all asking ourselves, are we going to have a job 1 year from now? Will the company or the school or the industry I'm working for, will we still have jobs and will we still be earning money to help our families 1 year from now? We're all asking ourselves the question, right? Maybe your parents are not telling you, maybe your teachers are not telling you, but I'm telling you it's happening. I'm thinking about it, right? At a time like this, you have to be tough. And guys, your generation can make a huge difference to your parents, right? How are you being tough at a time like this becomes absolutely critical, right? So I'll give you some examples, right? I remember when I was growing up in school, I still remember I was in class 11 and I really wanted to become school captain. So I was on the debating team, I was on the swimming team, I was on the elocution team, I was on the quiz team, but I didn't have a great sport. So I decided to take football so that I could play football for the school and that would help me become school captain, right? Now, football classes were at 6 in the morning and my school started at 8. So football classes were in school between 6 and 7:30. I remember in those days when I was growing up in Calcutta, my mother and father had 2 cars with 2 drivers. So I assumed every morning at 5:45, one of the drivers would come, take me in a car, drop me to school so that I could practice football. My mom looked at me and said, sorry, if you need to leave the house at 5:45, you need to figure out your own way in class 11. And I'm not calling a driver for you. Why should I wake the driver up that early in the morning for you? And I was like, Mama, I'm your son. Of course the driver can wake up. And she said, no, you need to be tough on your own. You need to figure it out. So I would wake up every morning at 5. I would have quick breakfast. I would take my bags. I would walk about 2 kilometers to the bus stop, catch a bus, and finally reach school at 6 in the morning, right? This is despite the fact that I had 2 cars and 2 drivers at home, right? Now, I hated it when I was happening. I hated it. Every morning I would complain. Why am I doing this? I don't care. Why is mommy being so tough on me, etc., etc. Do you know, guys, it's whatever, 30 years since that incident, 25 years since that incident. I think about it even today because it has made me a much tougher human being. It has made me a stronger person. I didn't realize it then, but I thank my mother today for building that toughness in me so that when times like this come, I go, fine, we'll find a way. Nothing's impossible, right? So ask yourself, people, what are you doing to build that toughness in yourself? Now, toughness can be two things, people. It can be physical toughness, it can be mental toughness, right? Now, on physical toughness, are you exercising every day? Or are you getting up and exercising your fingers by playing Fortnite or putting something on Instagram or making a TikTok video, right? Or are you guys actually exercising every day by saying, you know what, I'm going to go for a half an hour walk? When you're exercising physically, are you being competitive with yourself? You know, I'm taking a walk every day. And every day when I take that walk, I'm trying to beat the time I did yesterday. So I typically go for a 3-kilometer walk, 3.5 kilometer walk every day, right? It takes me 30 minutes. Now, it took me 30 minutes 2 weeks ago, then it became 29, then it became 28. Today I did it in 22 minutes. And tomorrow I have to beat 22 minutes for that same walk and run, right? So how are you making your body a lot tougher, right? The other toughness, guys, is mental toughness. How are you exercising self-control? If you're used to having one Coke every day, are you exercising mental toughness by saying, I'm not going to have a Coke today? If you are used to having 10 chocolates a day, are you exercising mental toughness by saying, I'm only going to have one chocolate a day? You all have heard about meditation. You know, you're a very lucky generation because you have YouTube and all the gadgets in the world. How many times have you gone to YouTube and said, a children's meditation exercise for 5 minutes? Have you typed that in YouTube and tried to go and meditate for 5 minutes by learning from YouTube, right? But guys, the more important lesson I'm giving you through this, it is a time when you need to increase your toughness. Please take this time to build physical and mental toughness, right? If you like, start reading the page of the Bhagavad Gita every day. One page of the Gita. Trust me, I've done it before. It works really well. Try doing some sacrifices for your friends, for your parents, for your people around you. But start becoming a little more mentally tough and a little more physically tough would be advice number 1, right? Advice number 2, I said more toughness, better relationships, one skill and knowledge, right? Number 2 is on relationships. Guys, I told you, right? Your parents are going through a tough time. Your teachers are going through a tough time. Your grandparents are going through a tough time. What are you doing to help them during this tough time? Have you ever sat down with your mom and said, how are you feeling? With your dad and said, Dad, how are you feeling? Can you explain to me what are you going through right now? Are you worried about your job? Why are you worried about your job? What are the things I need to sacrifice to help you? Are you showing that empathy that the adults need right now at a time like this? Most of the times, people, adults look after you, right? It's your time to look after the adults right now because they need all the help they need. You know, I have this simple exercise and I would strongly recommend each one of you try this exercise, right? You know, I read this book once which said you can normally play 6 roles in life very well. You can't play more than 6 roles in life, right? You can play 6 roles. Now, if I look at you as students, I'll tell you the 6 roles you're playing. The first role is you're a son or a daughter to your parents. So you're playing the role of a child to your parents, right? The second role you're playing is of a student. you're a student at the RD school, and you are investing in your education. The third role you are playing is a friend. You're a friend to your friends. The fourth role you're playing is a grandchild. You're a granddaughter or a grandson to your grandparents. The fifth role that you're playing, in most cases, is a sibling. You have a brother or a sister, and you are a brother or a sister to them. And the sixth role that you play is to yourself. What are you doing for yourself, right? Now, on these 6 roles, ask yourself, on a score of 1 to 10 for each role, how much would you grade yourself? Forget what the other side is grading you. Ask yourself, how much would you grade yourself? So as a son, out of 1 to 10, as a son to your parents, how much would you grade yourself? You may say 5 on 10. Okay. As a sister to your brother, how much do you grade yourself? You might say, I give myself for everything that I'm doing 6 on 10. Something else, 7 on 10. Total your score. If your score is less than 48 out of 60, which means you need to get 8 in every role, you are not winning over your relationships. And then take the 2 roles that you have scored the lowest on, right? And make an investment on those roles, right? So I'll give you an example, right? I think about 5 years ago when I was rating myself as a son to my parents, to my mother and father, I gave myself a 3 or a 4 on 10. I was not happy. I was not in touch with them. I was living outside the country. I was not talking to them properly. I was not having quality conversations. And I made myself a promise. I said, I'm going to invest in this role to make sure that I get to a 10 on 10. I want to be a 10 on 10 for my parents, right? Today, if you ask me my score, I truly feel, given all that I do, I'm a 10 on 10. I try and call my mom every day, no matter which part of the world I am in. I call her up every single day as much as possible so that I can talk to her. She tells me what's happening in school. She tells me what's happening with her life. We talk about her life. We have a good, robust conversation, right? So if you are giving yourself a 2 on 10 for your grandparents, during this lockdown, are you going to make a promise that you're going to talk to one grandparent for 15 minutes every single day, no matter where they are? You're going to FaceTime them, you're going to WhatsApp them, you're going to call them every single day. If you tell me that you're 3 on 10 with your sister, what are the 1 or 2 things that you're going to do with your sister to take that 3 on 10 to a 9 on 10? If you are 2 on 10 with your father, what are the 3 things that you're going to do to improve that relationship with your father to make it a 10 on 10? But guys, all I'm saying is, if you don't invest in that lockdown right now, you are never going to invest in it in the future. So my second tip to you on relationships is, number 1, assess your 6 roles. Give them a score. And then make a plan on how you're going to improve them in the next 2-3 months to make it a lot better, right? So that's my second advice on relationships. The third advice I have, people, given you're in lockdown, you have to pick up knowledge. There is no better time to learn more than a time like this, right? I'll give you some advice. I love reading. I really, really, really enjoy reading. Even though I'm working, I am reading 1 book every single week. Every week, I'm finishing 1 book on my Kindle. It's a way for me to read, get new insights. The books are different. It might be fiction today. It might be something else tomorrow. You know what I did? And you'll find this fun. In the last 1 month, I reread all the 7 Harry Potters again because I had forgotten them. and I reread all the 3 Lord of the Rings again because I had forgotten them. So I read The Fellowship of the Ring, I read Two Towers, and I read Return of the King. I love those books. I had forgotten it, and I reread them again. 1 book a week, right? So again, if you're ready for a Harry Potter quiz, you can have it with me right now, but I've just finished reading all the 7 Harry Potters because it makes a difference, right? Get on to YouTube and ask yourself, what are things you've been dying to learn about? Type it on YouTube. If you want to know why clouds make rain, don't wait for your teacher to teach you that. Type it on YouTube, why clouds make rain, or Google it and learn about it. If I ask you why is coronavirus called COVID-19? Ask yourself if you know the answer. If you don't know the answer, figure out what the answer is. Why is it called COVID-19? You know, one of my favorite plays when I was growing up in school was Macbeth by William Shakespeare. I enjoyed it so much, I remember the lines even today. So Act 1, Scene 1 is, when shall we 3 meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain, when the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost or won, that'll be in the air, the set of sun, where the place upon the heat, right? So I can go line after line. 2 days ago, I sat with my son, who's 10 years old, and he's beginning to learn Shakespeare. And we picked up the BBC version of that play, Macbeth, which was performed in the Globe Theatre in 2013. And we watched that together on YouTube. And while I was watching it, I was explaining to him, who is Macbeth, who is Macduff, why is Lady Macbeth doing this, why is Lady Macbeth doing that, right? So again, guys, the point I'm trying to make is, during this lockdown, you need to have that inherent curiosity and desire to learn more. In this lockdown period, if you've not read 10 new books, in this lockdown period, if you've not learned 10 new things that you did not know before, in this lockdown period, if you haven't done 10 crosswords which you haven't done before, in this lockdown period, if you haven't learned 10 new games that you haven't done before, shame on you. Because you had all the time in the world, you didn't have the discipline. So point number 3, guys, is pick up more knowledge. My final point on the lockdown one is you have to learn a skill. So knowledge is one thing, right? What is the skill that you're learning during this lockdown period? It may be small, it may be big. It doesn't matter, right? What do you do for breakfast every morning, right? Are you waking up every morning, getting to the dining table and looking into the kitchen and asking Sitaram or whoever your cook or maid is and looking at them and saying, "Mere ko omelette banao"? That's easy to get done, right? Very easy to get done. Or do you ask yourself, you know what? I don't know how to make an omelette. Let me try learning how to make an omelette during this lockdown period. Right? Maybe your father, your sister, brother, mother is a guitar player. There is a guitar at home. Do you take this opportunity to say, "Papa, teach me the guitar"? Or do you get onto YouTube with a guitar and ask yourself, how do I learn the guitar on my own? You've never played chess in your life before. Do you sit down and ask yourself, how do you learn chess and start playing chess? Right? You've never done exercise before. You've never run 1 kilometer in 7 minutes. Do you start saying, I'm going to get so physically fit that I'm going to run a kilometer in 7 minutes or under? So ask yourself, during this lockdown period, what is that new skill that you are picking up right now? So let me summarize that, folks, right? I repeat again, if you don't come out of this lockdown period with more toughness, more knowledge, better relationships, and a new skill, shame on you. You never lack the time, you lack discipline. So on toughness, get physically and mentally tough. Remember my story about taking the bus every morning and walking every morning, right? What are you willing to give up on to make yourself tougher during a time like this? On relationships, ask yourself, which are your poorest relationships and what are you going to do to improve that? Number 3, on knowledge, how much are you reading? How much are you learning? Forget what school is doing. Where is your own curiosity to learn? You're reading a new book every week. Lastly, on skill, what are you doing? Are you learning a new musical instrument? Are you learning a new game? Are you learning a new sport? Are you learning how to cook? Are you learning how to clean? You know, I'll give you an example. I remember all my life I was born and brought up in a house which had house help, right? So everybody did everything for me. And then the first time I left India, I reached Singapore and I had no idea how to do anything in life. My mother came and settled me in, but then she had to leave. So she made enough food for 2 months and put it in the freezer and then she left. Once that food had finished, I suddenly realized I had to do many things on my own. I had to learn how to cook on my own. I had to learn how to clean on my own. I had to learn how to iron my clothes on my own. So if you are not getting your uniform today and you said I gave it into the washing 2 days ago and it hasn't come back, ask yourself, is washing and ironing your clothes a skill you want to learn during this lockdown period for 3 reasons. You don't know how to do it. It'll help the family. It'll make you a better human being. Ask yourself what you're doing about that, right? So in closing, before I open it up for Q&A, I'll leave you with 3 things, people, right? In Julius Caesar, for those of you who've read Julius Caesar, right? There is a soothsayer who looks at Caesar earlier on in the play and tells him, you're going to die on the 15th of March. And in Shakespearean language, they used to call it the Ides of March, right? So he told Caesar, you will die on the 15th of March. So on the 15th of March in the morning, Caesar sees the soothsayer in the crowd. And he looks at the soothsayer and says, I, soothsayer, the Ides of March have come. So Caesar tells him, the 15th of March is here. I'm not dead. And the soothsayer says, I, Caesar, but not gone. The day is not over yet, right? The point I'm trying to make, people, the coronavirus come. I, students, but not gone. And it's going to take time for it to go. So till it takes time for it to go, this is the perfect time to show your character, right? It's the perfect time to show your character, right? You know, a lot of you must have read this poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. If you can do this and then this will happen. The last 2 lines of that poem say this, right? If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance run, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And what is more, you'll be a man, my son. So at this time of lockdown, if you can fill every minute, you maximize the 60 seconds, you'll be a rock star, dude. That's what I'm trying to tell you in very simple language. You'll be rock star.